Is these days.
Watching you?
Maybe.
Got a doll with pins sticking in you every time she watches the screen.
Could be. Well, good morning, everybody. Wonderful to see you this morning. Thank you for joining us. Oh, good Lord. They are, aren't they? How are we doing this morning? Let's see, what can you see behind me here? Do we like that shot? Not bad, not bad. So let me say hi to a few folks here and we'll double check and make sure we're functioning. Good morning, Sweden. Love to see the 5x5. It's a calm morning here. We got the cardboard box, boxy mix box. Denmark, good morning. Ooh, we're getting some strong sun at the moment. Wonderful. Evelyn, good morning. Tom from Buckeye, Arizona. There's about 230 of you currently. South Australia and Belgium, good morning. Japan, you think I'm making this stuff up, Randy? I can't believe it, man. I still can't believe it. We've been on a goose chase this morning. Old Randy, my special guest, and I got to get one of these boosters, man. Randy keeps saying we're driving around, we're trying to find a good spot. Randy's got I got 5 bars. I don't know what your problem is. I've got like 1, 2. So we were, the clock was ticking and we're zooming all over the place on the back roads, and we settled on this spot mainly because of the coverage. We were running out of time. But you can see the mighty, you're looking north. You're looking north over kind of a different vantage point of looking at Wenatchee, the Columbia River. So the Columbia River is kind of slowly creeping your way. And we're doing well with super calm at the moment. Quite warm actually now. It's really warming up nicely. And we're going to make our best effort here at this spot. A few more hellos, and then we'll say a couple quick things. Oh, you know what? I want to say it right now. Yeah, there's a big highway down below us here, but that's kind of part of the experience, as I think you might be able to see. Has anybody got a question for you? Has anybody taken the time to look at the description of this video, the text right down below the frame, and you might have to click on see more, and can you find a link down there? And has anybody tried the link? You have to put in a password. So I'm basically saying, can you tell me if that has worked? Okay, yes, Kathy. So it's worked. It's working properly because I want to refer people to that. Saw the link worked, the password works. Good, okay, so I'll refer to that. Watched it twice, wow, okay. Password is wrong. Okay, well, let me hang on here now. Is that person's issue, or are we all having trouble? Several of you have watched it, says Nancy. Thank you. Good. Works for me. Okay. Terrific. So before we begin, this is the week that has happened here. We talked about British Columbia Geology ? On Tuesday. We did a session in the backyard with Andrew Sadowski from the Washington Geological Survey. I was up kind of a circus environment up by Saddle Rock 36 hours ago or whatever, trying to find good coverage and deal with the wind and everything else with Jason and Julie. So that's kind of almost part one of our session here this morning. And then here we are this morning, and you're certainly welcome to come back and join us tomorrow morning back home in my backyard talking about the San Andreas Fault in California. How about a few more moments to say hi to people? We have more than 5 minutes. I'm confused by people saying the password is wrong. I've seen enough people to say that that's working, so I'm just going to ignore that. Who else we got? DC, Washington. Good morning from Hungary. Hello, Adam. Florida, good morning. Good morning, Patrick. Rainy Vancouver. Oh, sorry about that. Rodney in Calgary. Port Townsend, Washington. Natchez. Luxembourg. Hello, Alan. Maine. Big Dale in Issaquah. These Saturday morning sessions are always fun to see. Oh, hello, relatives in Wisconsin, Bob and Sherry. Denmark, good morning. Carson City, Nevada. Outstanding. Very windy down in Livermore, California. Dirk, good morning from the Netherlands. The Netherlands. Okay. We'll begin our, I didn't even tell you that. It's 8:55 according to my watch. We'll begin our program at 9 o'clock, about 5 minutes from now. I'm going to go visit with our guest for a few minutes, but I'll be back. Hang with us. People are trickling in. We got almost 500 now. Thank you.
Good morning, students, teachers, and parents of Winter's KL team. Firstly, I want to say that I've missed you all during our stay-at-home order. So much has happened in the world, in the state of the world. Congratulations, especially to Kendra and Charlie, graduation. To my freshmen, sophomores, and seniors, congratulations. Thirdly, there's an online class today with Nick Zentner, and I'm told he will be referencing the original Chaston film. It's today at 9 a.m. Link below. Here's the link.
Good.
Finally, I hope you have a terrific summer. Dare I say the best summer? Yeah, there you go. You can put the link down there.
Good.
The missing link.
Finally. I'm going to ask one more time. I don't know how many bars I have of cell coverage, but can I ask one more time, please? We doing okay? Stream quality. Delay in the comments. Good, thank you. Great to see. This will be a good one. I'm glad you're with us. A few of my friends. It's pretty pathetic, isn't it? I have this middle-aged guy next to the road talking to himself, you know, talking to a ladder.
Looking sand, looking in the dirt.
Yeah, like a home plate umpire here, getting home plate ready for you.
Wearing your rattlesnake delight. Have you come across any rattlers?
Not so far. Yeah, usually, but I haven't had too much problem with that. How about you?
5 up in the out towards Cabin Creek the other day. One was that was probably about as big as, a little rounder than my wrist. Big timber rattler, big black one. Just you saw the outline of the patterns, but he was so dark, and just the outlines of the rattlers, and the diamonds in kind of a tan color. But he had a head like this, about that size. Yeah. Oh, he was mad. He was not only rattling, he was throating. Like you hear a puff adder do when they swallow. Oh, he was mad. I want to take you home. I want to make you my friend. I want to hug you and love you. Until your fucking eyes pop out. When I was a kid, I would have done that.
I think you're living life a little more dramatically than I am, Randy. Your stories is going underwater.
Oh, yeah. Then the next weekend, Aaron, my nephew, comes and picks me up. He works for BP down in Portland. He's got a place up in Winthrop. His girls live up there, so he has to run up every 2 weeks. Well, he said his car is in the shop up there, so he rented a car in Portland. He said, come up with me, he said, and then you can drive my car back, and I'll drive the rental car. I said, okay. So we headed up, got up there, dropped his stuff over in Winthrop, headed over Omac, got the car, and I said, let's do something first. Let's take it for a test run. Let's take it for a test run and see how it goes out on the desert. So we headed up into the Big Goose Lake area. We got out there, we brought it up to 90, 95 just to make sure. No bars, no cell phone coverage, 95 degrees. Holy shit. Thank God all my relatives used the back road. They call it the Indian Audubon. And they came along. And Aaron had already gone up to the top of the hill about like this here. Over. And he had to go up another one. And he was up there, and he's wearing shorts and his sandals and dodging rattlesnakes. He said, more rattlesnakes than I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, wow.
He said, anyway, he got phone coverage up there. He called the mechanic. Meantime, I'm down below, turning into an old bean,
That kind of condition? Oh my God, that's hot.
But my relatives pulled in, and one of them had a big truck. He works for the electrical company, and so he put me in the shade there, and he was giving me water and visiting, but nobody left. There was like 5 carloads of people, and we were just like, there was like before Friday night partying. So, I finally got home.
You got a million, I can tell you that.
Life is, I like your book here.
Oh, thanks. Look at that. Oh, that one, huh? Did you know him?
Yeah.
Did you? Well, a pleasant good morning to you all. Thank you for joining us. You're looking live right now on a beautiful Saturday morning in Wenatchee, Washington, USA. It's about 9 o'clock local time, Pacific time, and I'm so glad that you're with us. We have a very special guest with us this morning, and before we turn our eyes and ears to Randy, let me give you a little backstory real quick. My name is Nick. I teach at the college over in Ellensburg, Washington. It's about an hour, 20-minute drive from here. So I got up early and drove over this morning. And Randy and I have been visiting and kind of driving around up in the hills, and it's always a pleasure to be with him. I teach geology to 19-year-olds at the university, and I've been doing it for 30 years here. But lately I've been doing more and more things off campus, programs for the public, television and lectures around the state, etc. And I have found that translating complicated scientific jargon for a general audience involves finding ways to package that information to work. And that's really what I'm trying to do with much of this, including these live streams. Take detailed research and kind of dust it off and combine it with some other things and talk about really places in a story way, telling stories involving specific places. And my stories involve research over the last 150 years, more or less, and it involves the research people themselves. And if you joined us in our last live stream up at Saddle Rock, I was conveying what we know and what we don't know about Saddle Rock and Stemilt Spires and the Liberty Gold and the gold that's here. And you can have a whole list of things, and we know certain things and we don't know other things, scientifically. Well, this morning is a very unusual live stream, and I hope that you enjoy it. And I want to tell you just a little bit about how I was able to meet our guest this morning. There's a gal named Amelia Yokel Egbert, and she was teaching here in Wenatchee high school students, teaching them how to make films. And I got a call from her maybe a year and a half ago, and Amelia said, "Hey, I'm up here in Wenatchee and I'm making this film called The Winter's Tale, Specsman, Dragon Specsman. And I'm wondering if you wouldn't come over to Wenatchee and we'd like to film you about what you know about the geology." And she had a kind of a laundry list of specific places that she wanted me to talk about from my world, from my point of view, from my background. And so I said, sure, I have practice talking to a camera, I'll come over. And I'd never met Amelia before, and I walked into this little studio and they had all the lighting and the audio ready to go and the director's chair and the whole bit. And I spent maybe a total of 45 minutes with them and then took off. And months later, I got a link from Amelia and she said, "Thank you, I'd like to share with you our finished product." And before I forget, the film exists now. It's not widely distributed. It's a 23-minute film. And here's how to get to that film. So you can pause and scratch all this down if you want to do it that way, including you need a password. So you're going to a website called Vimeo, which is a video hosting site, and the title of the program you can see on the top. But a far easier way to get to this film is to look right down below me right now. There's a little paragraph with text talking about this live stream, and I put the link there. I put all this gibberish there. You just would click on this basically, it's blue, and then you would have to enter this password, Specsman, to get to Amelia's and her students' film. And it's like, okay, I don't know, why would I do that? A bunch of high school students, it's probably amateur hour. Well, it's not, it's an amazing film featuring our guest this morning and a little bit of me as well. So what you're getting this morning is kind of a live version of the people who are in this film, and I encourage you to watch it after the fact or whatever. So to finish my little story, my little preamble here, I did not meet Randy. I just came in and did my thing, and Randy came in at a separate time, did his thing, and it turns out Randy, who has deep roots here and thousands of years worth of people passing down these stories, these Native American stories about these landmarks here in Washington, the film goes pretty much back and forth between Randy and myself. But even without meeting Randy, the film does a nice job of showing some intersection, some overlap between some of these amazingly spiritual stories and the world that I'm representing, which is much less deep, much less spiritual, but we have our own procedure to break open rocks and get geochemical samples, etc. So Randy and I were driving around this morning and we're like, well, what are we going to do with this thing? And we're like, well, we'll just let it roll. We'll just freelance. We'll just let the Great Spirit guide us. And that's what we're about to do right here. So I think I'm going to have Randy introduce himself to you in the way that he would like to introduce himself to you. And I'm sure he has some introductory things he'd like to share with you to get you in the feeling of where he's coming from and what we might want to discuss. And then we will do a little bit of live Q&A, the best we can. I don't have my laptop with us this morning, but I'll be kind of peering from the side at the comments, and we'll just work on the fly and try to deal with you the best we can. Last comment. I don't see any comments scrolling right now. Oh, I just did. I was going to say I got nervous that we lost our connection, but that means you're locked in, I think. If I don't see a bunch of comments scrolling, that means you are ready. And I think that's what we mean here, right? Okay. Randy, You want to switch places with me?
Stay right there.
Yeah.
So you don't. So you're not photobombing me.
Oh yeah, I won't. That's right.
I want to keep my visor down because it keeps the sun out of my eyes. I hope you're all able to see me and hear me. Randy Lewis. Why? Tlahast. I'm here in the Wenatchee. My name is Randy Lewis. My Indian name, Kayahan. I grew up right above where we're standing right now in an area up here that was well known to our Wenatchee people, the Wenatchee Indians and Pascosa Indians. And I grew up at a time when there was still a huge, resource in elders. My old people were still alive. Our old time people were still alive. My great grandparents who came from the mid 1800s were still alive. And every day when we lived up here, we didn't have electricity. We didn't have running water, some of the modern conveniences. But what we didn't have was we didn't have extraneous noise from television or radio. And so what we heard was each other. What I heard was my grandparents. What I heard was my parents. And every night, my grandparents would sit and tell us our creation stories, our stories. I was really fortunate. My great-grandfather was with us. My great-aunt was with us. And they were born in the 1870s and the 1880s. And so our creation stories, this wonderful valley that you can see behind us. Yeah, it's been populated by others. But it's inconquerable. These humongous rock icons here, they tell stories. Long before us, before the world was turned upside down, before the great floods, our people were here. They had come in here, and they were here to witness the glaciers break. Right below us down here at Rock Island, there's villages here that go back 14,000 years. And we didn't go anywhere. We've always been here. And in being here, we've been able to gain a real closeness and understanding to everything that is. Everything that is. All that is holy. The plants, the animals, those that swim, those that fly, the rocks. My grandfather was very keen on talking and addressing the rocks. He said they were our first life. Fire, water, rock, in that order, was first life. And so we pay respect to them in our ceremonies. Now, when Nick and I met, we took this road trip, and it was an incredible road trip, talking about some of the areas around here. And as he said, as he brought forth, I worked on a book and on a film called The Winter's Tale, and Red Star, Blue Star. Oh, he's da 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 da. And another one on Rock Island. Rock Island was the foundation of our world. It's shaped like a heart down here in the Columbia River. Well, that's one of the many places. But our creation story, our stories start right about the time the glaciers were melting. And around that time, we say the animals and the people spoke together. I want to let you.
I just want to
go ahead. Nick has got it.
I just want to make sure that we've got. We got traffic noise. Is that a distraction to you? I can turn the camera a little bit. Let's just pause for just a second. Can I get some feedback from you, please? Is the traffic noise a major annoyance to you? And if not, I can turn the camera away from the Traffic noise, not a big issue. A couple more from you, please. There is traffic noise, but, you know, I don't know.
It's the best we're going to do.
Yep. Not a problem. Okay, good. And you're hearing him okay? You can get used to it. What the heck? You can get used to it. What if we do this? Nope. Okay.
There, I hope that helps. Yeah, we have to contend with traffic. That's a reality in this world. The din of noise is everywhere. Anyway, our people, there, but I'm blinding myself. We say that the animals gave us everything. When we arrived from out of darkness, the animals greeted us. And from the animals, from every animal, we learned something. We didn't come here with an innate knowledge. We didn't come out of the ground with an innate knowledge of everything. It was through the songs and the stories of everything, including the plants, that we were able to learn and to live here. Everything we needed, we accessed from here. It was like our Garden of Eden. Every plant we knew, every plant had a purpose that we could exploit and use for health, for food, for construction, everything. Some plants provided all of that. They were both food, construction material, and medicine. Well, here along the Columbia, you'll come across massive, massive stones. And I wish we could have filmed this up the river, up the canyon here, because there's a huge, what would you call that?
Yeah, kind of some wonderful bedrock spires.
We call it the spine of the dragon. And down here in the middle of the river, the head of the dragon rises from the river. A piece of basalt, a gigantic basalt, erratic. And it goes back to the stories of our people. When our people were first growing, there existed here a dragon, a giant water being, a shapeshifter. We call him Spachsman, and he was the great mystery. And he was a carryover from not just the last era, but from the era before. We live in different eras, different houses. He came from the third house before us. So he's an ancient being. And he's probably, it was the greatest creation that Hoyanchoten, our creator, had ever created. And so he remained. It remained. Spachsman remained. Well, to the detriment of people, because he would devour the people as they came to the river. He would devour the animals as they came to the river. Finally, the Creator had had enough of this and decided to send change, create change. And so he employed Shmiao, the trickster, Coyote, to be the changer, to bring the word of the change. Okay, I'm going to fast forward. Coyote, there are two beings, human beings, Red Star and Blue Star, that are born, and the village celebrated, not only the people, the animals, because at that time people and animals talked together, they walked together, they talked together. And so the twins were celebrated, but during the celebration, they're stolen, they're taken into a secluded environment underground, and from that point on, every night, animals would visit them and sing to them and pass on. I guess you could say they were preparing them for a day to come. Well, over years and years, they've heard all the songs, they've learned everything from every plant, every animal. They're brought to the entrance of the cave, which is just down below here. And they're introduced to Shmiao, the coyote, the trickster. And for the first time, they see light. From that point on, their goal was to conquer Spexman, not kill him. We can't kill something, it's all power. And so throughout this valley, you'll find the remnants of him. Up the river, you'll find his tail, his back, part of his tail. It's called Goose Tail Island, but we know it as the dragon's tail. Down below, straight down from here, his head rises. Up the canyon, his spine. And the reason they're all over is because when they finally conquer him with the powers and the knowledge that are given to the twins by the people, all of the animal people and the plants, they're able to conquer him. They take his power and he sinks into the Columbia only to rise as his head. And from that point on, the animals and the people divided. They used their power to divide and separate him, bringing his spine up here, his tail is up the river, his head is down here. His hind legs are thrown to the south, and it becomes our neighbors to the south, the Warm Springs, the Wasco, Wishkam. To the other area, the Nez Perce, the Umatilla, the Palouse. To the north becomes the Thompson and Lahappan people. The Okanagan becomes, the head is sent to the Okanagan, to the head of the lake. They become the head. And to the other side, Okanawa, the Kootenays. But here in Wenatchee, here south of Wenatchee, and maybe Nick will show you one day, the heart is left there, and it becomes the heart of our people, the Wenatchee people. It's up to you now, Nick.
Oh, no. Keep going. I hope you're loving this. I can't get enough of this. Shannon says this is absolutely amazing. Thank you. Awesome, says Pika in Finland, etc. I mean, you've done this a million times.
I have not. This is my first time.
So, well, let me. I don't want to steer you, but let me suggest a couple of things, and then we'll maybe go to what they want to ask.
Yeah.
Some of the landmarks here. We were up at Saddle Rock last
Right.
night. What can you tell us about Saddle Rock, Castle Rock? What are your names for those things? And how do they fit into some of the stories you were talking about?
There are numerous stories on all of these. Saddle Rock. You got it? Okay. Saddle Rock. That's the two bears. When Red Star and Blue Star have finished conquering Spexman and writing a lot of things in our world here, changing things. They were the changing twins. They turned into Michal and Stamstamilt. Stamstamilt, the grizzly bear, Michal, the black bear. And they rose to what is Saddle Rock, the two bears, to watch over the people, to watch over their valley. Up here in Stamilt, where I was showing Nick this morning, God, I wish we could have filmed there. The spine, all of these spires stick out of the ground. They rise hundreds of feet into the air, and it's almost like a limestone. It's brilliant white. And below it, below the spine, are two little figures, mink and weasel, or marten, pine marten and weasel. And they stand there with their arms like this, looking, making sure that spine doesn't go anywhere. And all along the river, you got Castle Rock. Castle Rock was the clup. It's Coyote's clup. Coyote's stick. Mm-hmm. It was a power stick of change. Mm-hmm. He could make things happen. It was magic. And Coyote's warning to the people, or his, I guess you could say, is it a prophecy? Is it a doomsday? He said, one day, this world is going to cry out in so much pain that Huayhui and Shtuanaito, Bigfoot, and little people. You call them elves, fairies, brownies, leprechauns. We all have them in our culture. They know the song of Spexman. They can bring Spexman back. When the world becomes so much in pain, the song of Spexman will make him rise. That up there, what you call Castle Rock, that's Klup. It's like the hammer of Thor.
It is the war club. When Specsman comes back, he will use that as the avenging, he's called it the avenging club of the Creator. I fear that time, because it's a time in which, like my grandfather would say, then you will know hell on earth.
I'm gonna do a little bit more with Randy, and then we're gonna come to you. Okay? You don't move it. You don't move a muscle here, man. You're doing. This is absolutely magical. Chaston Pinnacles, very similar looking to many people, but totally different story geologically, and totally different story for you as well. I think, right?
It's a long one.
Go for it.
Okay, Chaston Pinnacles. Do you have a picture?
I can find one easily.
Chaston Pinnacles. They rise just north of Wenatchee on the Wenatchee River, and they're called the Chaston Pinnacles. You know, to us, there they are. Now, if
Zoom
you
in real close, we'll just give you a real good shot.
those to us are the salmon rising, king salmon. When Coyote was making things, changing things, the people were starving. All the great animals had been destroyed. They had been washed away, spun into oblivion in a big blender called the Brett's Floods that Nick has probably talked about.
Yes.
The Brett's Floods, it just wiped the slate clean here on the plateau in all of eastern Washington, Oregon, Idaho, part of Canada. And so the food that they survived off from was gone. The food that was alive came down out of the mountains, as we know them, the deer, the elk, the bear, the smaller animals. And the people, though, were starving. And so Coyote was given the task of feeding the people. Anyway, Coyote goes to the animal kingdom, goes to all of our relatives in the animal kingdom and says, who will come forth? Who will come forth to help feed the animals? In other words, who will sacrifice themselves for people? Well, the bear said, nah. He said, nah. You know, if these people are so puny and weak, why don't we just let them die? That was, and maybe that wouldn't have been such a bad idea. So a lot of the animals were reluctant. And Wolf looks at them and goes, I eat them. Why would I want to feed them? One by one, the animals declined. As Coyote goes south, he comes finally he goes all the way to the ocean because none of the animals are willing to help. When he gets to the ocean, he takes that clup, his stick of power, and he slams the river. And from the river, all of the animals in the sea are beckoned. So representatives came. And one by one, he makes the request, will you come and feed the people? Everybody's declining. Finally, King Salmon comes forth and volunteers, but tells Coyote, you make us one promise. Make us this promise that when we go up the rivers and follow you, that where we die, our children will always come back to us in the streams in which we spawn or die. And yes, they fed the people. And so here at Pishpashashtan, where it's flat on the bottom, Pishpashashtan, are the pinnacles that rise out of the water. Coyote has gone up there, and Coyote runs into a dam, and he's encountered these a lot coming up, obstacles in the river that prevent the fish from going up. And there on the dam are these bird sisters who have the dam, and they keep the fish, they keep everything from going up. And so Coyote is transformed, he's put into a basket. Some say a bowl, some say he transformed himself into a bowl, others into a basket. And he floats down. And when he floats down, the sisters, they're just excited, this beautiful basket. In my grandfather's story, he's kind of like Moses. He's a baby riding in the basket like a cradle. And they pick him up because they can't have children. We'll keep him. Let's keep him. We'll hug him and we'll hold him and we'll squeeze. That's from another story. And one sister, she going, I don't know, this smells kind of, if you want to coin a phrase, fishy. So, but they relent and they keep the baby. But every day they go out to pick berries. Every day they go out to pick roots. What are we going to do with him? Well, Hamishmish, the mourning dove, I'll look after him, knowing what's happening. And so Hamishmish and Mole, they become the babysitters. And so they stand guard. Well, after the sisters go up, Coyote transforms back into Coyote. He's a shapeshifter. He transforms. He eats up all what they have left there. He takes his chlup. He hits their dam, blows the dam open, and the fish are allowed to return. To come up. At that point, the sisters come back. They're shocked, they're mad, they're angry. But he teaches them a lesson. He gives Loon this necklace. If you look at Loon, it wears a necklace of dentilium. Just as a lesson for your treachery, you wear this forever. And should you ever turn against man again, that necklace will choke you. With Shag, with Cormorant, he gave her spots on her back. So everybody will know her as a, as a villain. Mm-hmm. And he condemns her to go south, and she was never supposed to return, but now they're returning. Well, anyway, from that, Coyote takes his chlup, he hits the ground, and from the ground rise these heads, the salmon, which we now know as the Chaston Pinnacles. And there we go. Hey, there we go. Bet you can't guess what's inside here. Ice cubes.
That's a start for us. We're here for a while, and I want to give you a chance to interact with Randy. For those that are brand new to this world, or those that have been deeply interested in this world for a long time. Most of these stories have been held close. And so I've been here 30 years, haven't heard any of these stories, partly because of my ignorance, but partly because this is a spiritual matter. And so to have this rare opportunity to hear this stuff, I think I'm going to ask you actually. So have you been telling and sharing these stories with whoever wants to hear them your whole life? Or is this something in the last few years where you're thinking, I feel like I want to pass some of this on somehow?
That's a good question.
Comfortable
actually, my mother, the late Mary Miller Marchand, was, she was a language expert. She was a linguist. She was a historian for the Colville Confederated Tribes, where our Wenatchee people are now located. I didn't tell you that the people that were here were driven out. They were either exterminated or driven out, forced up onto a reservation, which a lot of people throughout the world understand. And my grandfather, Ashlachen, my mother's father, he was more so than my grandmother, Yapyawit. She liked to sit and, how would I say that, correct him. I think you all come from families where the grandmother always corrects the grandfather. It's no different throughout the world.
Right.
She would keep him on the straight and narrow.
Uh-huh.
Well, from them and from my grandfather, Ashlachen's father, my great-grandfather, these stories were told time and again. And my mother was too busy. She was raising kids. She was working all the time. My mother was trying to support us. We lived in a huge extended family, great-grandparents, grandparents, mother, father, kids, cousins, you know, sometimes 17 of us in the house. And so as time went on, we lost my great-grandfather, we lost my grandfather. My grandfather was the root and the resource, the source for so many stories, and especially for the dictionary for our people. My mother interviewed him, and then she wrote the dictionary. Her, with the help of Dr. Dale Kincaid in Vancouver at the University of British Columbia, they put together the dictionary, and then she went to work for the tribe. But I was one of her major resources. She said she didn't have that luxury when she was a kid of having her great-grandparents telling her stories. She said partially because it was a changing world and they thought maybe that it was no longer valid. I think they were right at the beginning of feeling, how would you say it, conquered.
Yeah.
And they were the first group to be put on the reservation. So maybe it was too painful for them, but they didn't share a lot of it. My grandfather did with my mother later on in his years, back in the 60s and 70s. Back in the 60s, I started traveling with my grandfather. He came and lived with me when I was in college. And then he and I would go out. He longed for his youth. He longed for his land here. And so we would take every week, we would come out and we'd grab my Uncle Louis Wapato, my great-grand-uncle Sam, and they were in their hunt. Louis was 95, 96, but my great-grand-uncle, he was 104 or 108. And my grandfather said he liked being around them because in his 70s, he felt like a young man around them. Well, I felt like a kid, but I would drive them throughout this area.
Yeah.
Well, now the time comes, my mother is gone. That generation is gone. We're missing this connection. And you asked me, do I tell these stories? Do I relate these stories to others, to people? My mother used to say, information is power. And there are people who would like to control that information, who would like to hold on to that power. She said, when people ask me if I would be interested in sharing, she said, I don't care what color you are. I don't care who you are. I want this information shared. I want people to understand our connection here. I want people to appreciate that we're still here. Yeah, I share it. But only the good stuff with you.
I think we're going to try to involve you now, and we'll take this however you like. I'm going to try to stand over here.
To me? Sometimes I don't know who he's talking to half the time. I catch him walking around in circles talking to himself, talking to the dirt.
After hearing those stories, I think I'm talking to some of those people in those stories, those amazing stories. So I'm going to try my best in real time to grab a few questions, and I think I'm good, Randy. I think I've got it here. What did you study in college? Did you go to college?
Yes, I did. I went to college all over because college was one way in which I could travel. And if I could keep my grades up, I started at Western Washington State University, went from there to the University of Wisconsin, to Stout State University. Shout out to everybody in Wisconsin. I see there's people from Wisconsin here, then to the University of Chicago, then the University of New Mexico. And what did I study? I studied bilingual, bicultural curriculum development education. There's a mouthful.
Yeah, you had to study in college to learn how to pronounce that. That sounds like a lot. Milwaukee, Wisconsin's here. Alan has saddened his inability to relay some of his stories. Please describe the boats your ancestors used on the river and how they were made. Thanks.
Yes, our boats. They were called canoes. And they were carved out, they're dugout canoes, carved out of a log. A lot of times we used cottonwood tree because it was easier to carve. It was a softer wood. Others up the river, our same people, our Salish people up the river. Hello, Salish people, Spokane Tribe, Coeur d'Alene's, Colvilles. They carved theirs out of yellow pine or white pine. And Some of them were quite long, some of them 30, 40 feet long. On this river, which can be very treacherous,
Yes.
Rock Island sat in the middle of the river, and they would take their canoes with the rapids and the waterfalls cascading around them. They would take their canoes there. Well, when my grandfather was a young man, he was one of the last fishermen on Rock Island. He and his great-grandmother, he would take... Okay, there is a picture of Rock Island. See how it's surrounded by the water. Well, he would fish there, and my great-grandmother would dry salmon there. She would dry it for everybody, because a lot of our people felt threatened and they would never return. But he felt that it was important to. And so, as a young man, he and his brother, my Uncle Hank, hello, Danny, it's my Uncle Hank's son, they took their canoe. They took 2 canoes, and they put a wagon with, a wooden wagon, buckboard wagon. They stuck the wheels in the canoe, and they ferried it out with the horses behind them, swimming in the water behind them to the island. That way they could move the salmon from one end of the island to the other, which was about 3/4 of a mile long. And if you understand king salmon, they can get up over 100 pounds. Well, they were tired of walking every fish up the river. So this way they could take a ton and a half, until Grandma she dried up to 10,000 salmon there. So actually she wasn't the only little old lady. Her and her, my grandmother, her daughter-in-law, they all helped. Anyway, that's the canoe.
Okay. I'm sure there's millions of questions. I'm just going to be randomly grabbing stuff kind of in real time and maybe scrolling back. Randy, what do you think when scientists figure out what your elders have long known? What do you think when scientists figure out what your elders have known already?
It's about time.
There you go, Lindsay. Forgive me now, I'm just scrolling around. How can you, automatic scroll, how can you preserve your history and legends for your people and posterity?
We're doing it. Oh, what is this?
Uh-oh. You still there? Sorry, I hit the wrong button. What can you do to preserve?
Well, preserving, how do we maintain it, you mean? Maintaining is more important than preserving. Preserving is like sticking a pickle in a jar, and 100 years later you opened up and it's the same bloody pickle.
Right.
We don't want it to preserve it.
Yeah.
We want to maintain and continue it. And we're part of that history.
Yes.
We're a piece of this puzzle, this great puzzle called Naham Skint Npaskosa. We're a piece of this puzzle. Each one of us has a story. My grandfather's stories, our creation stories. So we tell them. Now we have the immediate access to technology. So we're telling these stories. We're teaching them. We're telling our children. We're telling everybody so that everybody will learn. The only way you protect something is through education, through knowledge. If you try to hide that information, nothing is known about it, and they come through and they bulldoze it.
Is this just an older person's game, or do you see younger people, younger relatives of yours who are kind of taking the torch already from you?
Shout out to Sandra Warriors Pistol Bullets from up in Omak and Nispelem. She's in her 20s. She's doing this. She speaks Nahamjin. Ernie Brooks, my cousin, he's a little younger than me. He has been teaching everyone. Danny Nanamkin, who's also one of our young people. He holds, what do you call them? Camps, cultural camps on his property. A big shout out to him for that. Shelley Boyd up in Inchelium, another one. These are culture keepers. Bernadine in Omak, Bernadine Phillips, shout out to you. and bless you, she's another one. She's another member of the Wenatchee tribe. There's a lot of us who are kind of middle-aged malcontents, you know, who are trying to, this is our best shot
Yeah.
at saving us.
Yes. Well, that's hopeful to have
Oh yeah.
younger people invested. Have there always been younger people? When you were a young person, were you like those folks you were just talking about, or you didn't quite have the drive to?
Oh no, I was much more focused. No, I wasn't. I was just like everybody else,
Yeah.
and I was listening
Yeah.
to rock music.
Yeah. Oh, we all have stages, don't we?
I guess.
I'm reading pretty much. I'm not really screening these. Frank says, "Are you restricted from your land?"
We are, you know, this is a hard one. A lot of the areas are now privately owned, and little by little, people are, through education, people are becoming more accepting. It's really hard for a lot of people to understand that we have to glean our natural area for our roots, for our medicines, our food, and for our construction material. We still build longhouses, and not the coastal longhouse, but one that's made out of tule mats and a wooden frame, kind of an A-frame, and then small teepees made out of tule mats. At one time, the buffalo used to be here, but they were wiped out, so we still use the tule mats. And so we are restricted. Some private ownership, they'd shoot us, basically. Sometimes I feel like there's a bounty on our heads yet here. And other times it's national forest, kind of like crown land, and we can get access to it, but sometimes they're reluctant in letting us. And the materials that we need are holy, they're sacred. And so, but there's a lot of it that's state land, and we just jump the fence and do it.
What rocks were used for tools of old, and where were those rocks found, says Ken?
Every rock. You know, we're a 16,000-year-old culture right here. And I think when I walk around on the shoreline, I'm going, and my grandfather used to tell me, you know, I pick up this rock. I said, what is this? He said, it's a rock. He said, but you're not the only one who's asked that, probably, because every rock that you see has been speculated on by 1,000 generations of people here. Rocks were our raw material. What kind of rocks? Geez, Nick.
Yeah.
You're the authority on this.
Yeah. Well, yes. Not every rock has the right properties to use effectively. So yeah, there's one thing just to have a rock collection. There's another to actually have volcanic glass or some local interbeds that have a certain texture to, of course, work into tools. We have Patrick, age 6. If I was an adult and that land was for sale, I would buy it and protect it for Native Americans.
Yay, Patrick.
Good job, Patrick. Julie says, why is the coyote such a prominent animal in Native American stories as opposed to some other animals?
It just depends on where you're at. On the coast, you have blue jay is one of the, he's a prime. Blue jay talks like people. And we share with our coastal relatives, because they're from the same language group, the coastal Salish people, some of the same folk heroes, some of our same creation stories. Theirs change a little bit over there. They change a little bit down below. But coyote, I think because coyote encapsulates so much of the characters of people, of especially men. Coyote was obsessed with two things, food and sex, much like men. You're laughing, Nick.
I'd love to add to that, but Evelyn, age 7, will you share your story of the glacial flood or volcanic eruption? Do you have any stories tied to those two geologic events here?
Well, here, our people, before the great flood, this land down here all of this land. If Nick ever brought you over, did you go over to the Waterville Plateau?
Not yet.
Okay, it's a huge savanna area, and that's what this land was like. It was it's where the ice, right just north of where we're at right now, the wall of ice up to 2 miles deep rose. And the hot airs coming up from the south were creating a huge grassland of savanna here. A huge savanna of grassland, excuse me. And all of the apex animals, the mastodon, the mammoths, the giant sloths, the camels, the saber-toothed tiger. You know, boys always like that one. Anything is dangerous. They were all here. But our people, Coyote had come to our people. He came like the voice of God to tell the people, do not live where don't live in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
As we say, don't live too close to the bone.
Mm-hmm.
So the people would come down from the highlands and they would hunt down below. Then they would take their catch and their kill and bring it into the highlands. One night erupts the sounds, they hear the sounds, and the winds are coming. And the people are shuddering. It's all darkness and like fog blowing through. And all night they hear the sounds. They hear animals screaming. They hear massive thunders of boulders and ice, but they can't see it because it's in total darkness. And the next day arrives, and it's still darkness, just fog and wind. And the people, they huddle and, I guess you could say, cower at what's happening. They think it's the end of the world. But finally, the sun comes out, and when they look out, everything has been scoured. And there's a river moving, this massive river. And that's the beginning of time. That's where we say the beginning of time starts.
And that right there is the most obvious intersection between our two worlds. If you've been following some of these other live streams, we've been talking about the Missoula floods, talking about J. Harlan Brett's out on foot a mere 100 years ago, not 10,000, 16,000 years ago, but 100 years ago, finding scientific evidence for these incredible floods of water. But to have these stories passed down from thousands of years of people living here, that's a pretty powerful intersection of these two worlds. And we have yet to find an archaeological site and Ice Age flood deposits that we study together. But it seems like it's a matter of time before we're going to find evidence for some quite terrible drama. You got to go high. Could you comment on that? So we assume people are living in coulee bottoms and in harm's way, like in Moses Coulee or Grand Coulee, but you don't think, you have a different view of that.
That came afterwards.
Okay.
If you look at what we find in Moses Coulee, these areas where there's the sides of the coulees or the canyons, you've talked about those,
yes.
I know, are hundreds of feet, 1,000 feet high,
Mm-hmm.
and the bottom is just table flat.
Yes.
We find our ancient ones, we find the village sites, we find built out of basalt spalls, but those were occupied 1,000 years later. Before that, people still lived. They still maintained that covenant with the Creator to stay higher. Well, as time went on and it became safer, people finally moved down into these lower areas. But people ask, why isn't there any remains? Well, if I stuck you in a gigantic blender and put it on high, there wouldn't be a lot left to find. That's what happened here. It created dry falls. So you can imagine what it did to a village site.
Yes.
Well, if you go higher, you have to go. I was up here on one of the hills here when I was a kid, and my grandfather was digging post holes, and he came up with this beautiful axe head, like a war axe head, green. Our neighbor still has it here. It's green, but what is it made out of? It's made out of petrified or fossilized coral from Florida. It shows you the amount of trade that went back and forth throughout this country. Before the coming of white people, this land was well occupied. I mean, we're talking, Shuyapis, our conquerors, they like to say, oh, there was only a couple million people here. There were about 60 million in the United States, what we call America, Canada, US. About 60 million. About 100 million from Tierra del Fuego to the Aleutians. 100 million. And when Columbus stepped off his boat, he released this tsunami of death that just sped across the country. Not only humans, all the animals he released, bovine, equine diseases that wiped out billions of animals. So, I know I got kind of drifted away, didn't I?
Oh, that's good. You want to keep going? You okay for a few more minutes? Or should we wrap it up?
Well, read the shit. I mean,
these microphones are good now.
Okay. That's some good shit.
We had an episode on Mima mounds.
Yeah,
Any traditions about Mima mounds?
we're not coast Indians. No, we have very little oral history about what's on the coast.
Yes.
We call it huenhuenal,
Yeah.
like the word quinal, huenhuenal, everything that is on the salt water. And my mounds are a little south of there. I've been there, and when I was a kid with my grandfather, I asked him, how did these get here like this? He said, God.
I don't know if you could... Can you give us a feeling of what it sounded like when your grandfather talked to you? Like the sound of his voice or the language, or can you do kind of a time travel thing for us? No?
That's hard. I mean, I was, when you're a kid, everything is much greater.
Yes.
Much greater. When I would come through the house, when I would come into the house as a little kid, from the time I first started school, or when I would run up to the longhouse. When I was a little kid, my grandmother always thought, my great-grandma and my grandma thought it was important that we go to church. Well, Longhouse was the church. And she would put me, she'd put on my new Levi's and my white shirt and my cowboy boots. Ever since I was a little kid, I wore cowboy boots. Don't ask me why, but I always have. And she'd put on my cowboy boots and she would put my moccasins around my neck. And then I would head up to the Longhouse. And when I would come back, my grandfather, he'd be waiting there. I'd take my boots off and I'd go inside and he'd look at me and he goes, Kayahan, that's me. Kayahan, Stamesh Koilmaya, Quatluten. Means, what stories have you got to share with me?
Yeah.
Stemas Baos, what have you in your heart? My little friend, tell me.
A few more, and I think they're loving this. Of course, I'm loving this. We feel so honored to be with you this morning.
Where from?
That was me talking.
Oh, again.
Casey, what was the historical territory of the Wenatchee people? Any stories about Quincy, Ephrata, Soap Lake area?
Afraid of what? What are you afraid? We're one of the many tribes of a linguistic group called the Salish people. And we extend from Montana, from the Bitterroot Mountains, all the way to the Puget Sound, and all the way north, Salish people, up into central British Columbia. So it's a huge area. Well, it's not as huge as some of our neighbors, the Athabascan people, Algonquian people. Those are massive language groups. But the Wenatchee people, we never had to leave here. The Creator gave us everything, from the Cascade Mountains, the Wenatchee Mountains here, but we overlapped territories with our neighbors. So all I would say from the Cascade Mountains down just south of here, about 20 miles south of here, Quilmin, and over into the Kittitas. All the Kittitas people that I know, that I grew up knowing, we're all part Wenatchee because we overlap. You didn't marry into your tribe, you married your neighboring, and it strengthened the ties, it strengthened. We were so sheltered here, we didn't have to worry about warfare because you had to go through a whole shitload of our people to get to us.
Yeah, yeah.
And so now that's one of those terms. I guess I can use it because the president uses it. Why is it, do you think, that Americans, and American Indians in particular, will never adopt the metric system? Because there's no metric equivalent to a whole fucking shitload. Oh, sorry.
Freewheeling Randy Lewis this morning. You got unscripted, raw, and in person. 3 more, and I think we'll wrap it up. I'm scrolling back now with my my index finger. I'm not flipping you off. It's an honor to hear Randy's stories. Stacy, tell us about the horseman. Do you know anything about the horseman? Do you know what she's asking about? I don't see a blank look on your face. No, moving on, Stacy, sorry. Still looking for a few more to kind of wrap us up. We're approaching the top of the hour here, and I think this is good. I'm so glad you're with us. We have almost 1,000 from different countries. I'm going to come down here to real time here. Kim says, beautiful Omak powwow. What is the purpose?
The Omak Stampede and Suicide Race. What is the purpose? Well, for us from the Colville Indian Reservation, it's homecoming. It's one of those times we built this. It was built on a race. It was built on competition. And back during the Wild West, one of the young men, one of the young cowboys, one of the Moomaw boys from up there, had the first rodeo there. But before that, the Indians would run an endurance race with their horses over the hills, down through the river, then up. And the winner, you were racing for a prize, and the prize was a barrel of salmon. That's what we raced for. There was no money involved. But over the years, it has turned into this great event. Some people, you can accept it or not. It's an event in which these boys still ride that, and they love their horses. They sleep with their horses, a lot of them. Those horses mean as much as family, or more, actually. My nephew says his wife doesn't like him because he likes his horse better than her. That's the third wife. But the Stampede, there's an Indian encampment there. And many years ago, it used to draw native people from all over the plateau, from the West Coast, from the Puget Sound, from Canada, from Northern California, from all over, just to participate in the annual games, stick game, lahal, the horse races. And every year, it's kind of like this year. This will be the first year in 87 years that they haven't had it.
Yeah.
So that's what the Omak Stampede. It's homecoming. I'm not.
Any story? We had 2 more. Any stories about the erratics, the boulders?
Oh, those big things. Blackheads. Some of them. Yeah, there's a lot of stories about them, and it just depends on which band, which tribe you're from. Coyote, the crazy one, the trickster. Coyote is up here on the plateau, somewhere around on the Waterville Plateau. He comes across Nquisp, the remains of buffalo, the buffalo bull. Oh, he's going to have fun with this. So oh, pardon me, I got to turn this off. He takes buffalo bull. Buffalo has been his nemesis. Buffalo has made Coyote piss himself in the past. He cowers. Buffalo is so powerful. Well, he comes across the great bull's skull. Oh, he has fun. He throws it in the air. He spits into the eye sockets. He licks its nose. Turns around, kicks dirt on it after he urinates on it, and he just violates it. Well, Coyote's walking along, and he's joined by his friend, his relative, the fox. Now, Fox has got this unique ability. If Coyote is killed, which it tends to happen to Coyote a lot, because of his mischief, he is killed. Fox he's the only one that has the ability outside of the creator of stepping over once, twice, 3 times over Coyote's remains and reanimating him. Well, as they're walking along, they hear the sound, and it sounds like thunder. It sounds like an explosion. Then the ground is rumbling, and they turn around and they see this dust, and they could not figure out what's going on. So they continue, and it keeps getting, so they decide they're going to trot along. Coyote's going, okay, let's trot. I feel like a jog. And Fox knows that Coyote's fearing this. Well, as they turn around, it's getting closer and closer. All of a sudden, they're confronted. It's the bull. Little does Coyote know, Fox had stepped over the bull. just to teach Coyote a lesson. We have a visitor. Anyway, the bull is about ready to stomp Coyote into oblivion, and Coyote begs. He begs, and he tells the bull, he said, you know, you could use for a little freshening. Those horns of yours are pretty ratty looking. And so Coyote calls on his power, and he brings pitch to himself. He brings pitch, and he brings kind of like a sandpaper made out of horsetails. It's a little segmented plant that grows all over the world. And he proceeds to shine and polish the bull's horns. And Coyote says, now that young bull that drove you into exile, now that young bull, you can go back and do some business on him. The bull goes, well, thank you, gullible. Thank you. Coyote's always working from a different angle. So the bull goes back. He lets Coyote live. He grants him that. He goes back, and the bull takes his herd away from the young bull that has driven him to death. And he comes back to Coyote, and thankful to Coyote. Coyote, of course, is looking out, rolling his stomach. He's hungry. And so the bull takes one of his daughters and tells Coyote, here, I'm going to give you her. You can marry my daughter. And when you're hungry, just cut off a slice of the hump on her back. Cut off a slice and you'll have a knife. And that to Indians, the buffalo hump was the richest part. Oh, Coyote's in heaven. So they proceed on, and Coyote now, he's getting tired of all this rich fat. He wants the meat. So while the cow is sleeping, Coyote slays her. And they have this big feast. And Fox is going, I don't know about this. I don't know. Oh my gosh, he eats it. Shortly after that, they get up and he goes, oh, I can make some soup out of the bones. Nothing there. It's gone. Oh, Coyote, he's kind of, maybe I should have saved it. And they proceed on. All of a sudden, they hear the sounds, the ground shaking again. And as they turn, they see dust rising from all around them. And in it comes. It's the bull with his herd. Coyote goes, I was going to come and see you. He said, unfortunately, I had to eat her. And he looks over, and there she is, because Fox has reanimated her, and she went back to her herd. Coyote is just shamed. Coyote is shamed that he had done this, and he acts shamed, but it's all an act. All an act. So Coyote, the bull will not grant Coyote another victim. So Coyote leaves, and he sits at the edge of Dry Falls, he and Fox tells him, I told you so. I told you so. Coyote said, I knew it all along. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to back up.
Yeah.
The bull does stomp Coyote. He does stomp Coyote to death to teach him a lesson. If death could teach you anything, Coyote has taught a lesson. He's stomped into piss. And the bull leaves with his herd. It's a while later that Fox, I don't know, it's a geological period of time before Fox decides, maybe I'll try it. There's not much left to him. There's just a spot where his body was. So he steps over him, and Coyote sits up, and Fox says, I warned you. I told you. And Fox said, I knew that was going to happen. Coyote always, I knew that was going to happen, but I got some unfinished business. And Coyote returns over here on the other side, right by, I don't know the area, Waterville, what do you call that area? Anyway, you look out, and there's this huge, huge horizon of these black erratics. Yeah. Well, the night that Coyote decides to seek his revenge, he shows up, and the herd is all bedded down sleeping. And he goes by and slays them all. And there they remain. One holding its calf, and you can see it right by the road holding its calf as a reminder to us. You mess with Coyote.
We're ending there. It doesn't get any better than that. It doesn't not get any better than that.
Hey folks, I want to sign off. I want to say a shout out to all my friends in Sweden, in the UK, in Denmark, Netherlands, Belgium, throughout Europe. My nephew, Gianluca, in Rome. He's a police officer in Rome. Hello, Gianluca. To all my friends in Konnichiwa, Japan. Thank you very much. Throughout the world, I've enjoyed this. Thank you for tuning in to us. Nick and I have a great time. We've got a lot of road trips ahead.
We often do a toast to people's health and everything else. So do you want to offer a special toast to health and
pee?
Pee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As we say in Wenatchee, lam lamp, lam lamp.
Lam lamp. Thank you for joining us this morning. You're certainly welcome back tomorrow, talking about the San Andreas Fault in California.
That's their fault, though.
That's their fault. But implications to the tectonic movement that's going on up here. So there is a reason for us to go down to California and do a little geology. There is a specific reason, and you'll see what that's all about tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.
You got a long trip ahead of you.
I got a long trip down to California. Got a live stream from the Carrizo Plain. Thanks for joining us, especially new viewers who haven't been with us before.
Hey, Indian country, wherever you're at, if there's some native people out there, shout out.
Shout out. I love you. Goodbye.